They told me my mother was dead. Not a phone call from a hospital, not a doctor in a quiet hallway with a hand on my shoulder. A letter. A letter from Social Security that began, "We are sorry for your loss," and ended with a tidy explanation of why my mother's monthly check would stop. I read it twice in my kitchen and once more in the parking lot of Willow Pines Assisted Living, where my mother sat upright in her robe, very much alive, arguing with a nurse about how long a proper cup of tea should steep. My stepsister had filed a death certificate while my mother was drinking breakfast tea and complaining about the sugar packets. I will call my mother Marina because she likes the sound of it. I will call my stepsister Tessa because that name lands close enough to sting. We live in Briar Oaks, a town with one main street, two churches that trade bake sale dates, and a courthouse where everyone knows the clerk's dog. My mother raised me there. Tessa came later, when Mom married her father, Paul. We were not enemies, and we were not friends. We lived in a truce built out of polite hellos and separate rooms. She grew up believing beauty opens doors and that a closed door means raise your voice. I learned to carry a spare key. By the time this started, Mom had moved into Willow Pines. She was not fragile, just unsteady, like a table you can eat on as long as you do not lean your elbows too hard. I had durable power of attorney for her finances and for health care, a paper way of saying I handled the forms, the bills, and the phone trees. We kept her passports, Social Security card, Medicare letter, and the rest of her important papers in a small lockbox at my apartment, because the hallway cabinet at her old house had become a temptation for Tessa's curiosity. Willow Pines had my number set as primary. Tessa's name was listed third under other relatives. The Social Security letter was not the first sign. I just did not recognize the earlier ones as signs. A week before, the pharmacy said Mom's card declined for blood pressure medication. The next day, her bank app showed restricted where her balance used to be. Willow Pines emailed me about a returned payment for the monthly bill. I blamed some processing glitch. I was right about the word processing, just wrong about the type. I walked into Mom's room with the letter in my pocket. She was combing her hair with the focus of someone learning a new language. "The tea is wrong here," she said. "They rush it. It is disrespectful." I told her I would brew some right in the room, which the staff allowed because rules bend for people who bring cookies for the desk. Then I told her about the letter. I tried to keep my voice light, like we were sharing a bad review of a good restaurant. "They think I am dead," she said, looking at her nails. "What nonsense." "It is more than nonsense," I said. "Your accounts are frozen. Your benefits stopped. It means a piece of paper went where it should not." We drove to the county vital records office, where births and deaths are turned into entries with numbers. The clerk behind the glass had the efficient face of someone who has seen every kind of afternoon. I slid the Social Security letter under the window and asked to check my mother's status. Mom recited her full name, birth date, and the last 4 digits of her number with the triumph of a person who finds a $10 bill in a winter coat. The clerk typed, frowned, and said the sentence that clicked the world into the wrong gear. "I am so sorry. It shows your mother as deceased, as of last Tuesday." My mother leaned toward the glass and asked, "Do I look dead?" The clerk looked at the screen, then at my mother, and decency overruled training. She called a supervisor. They brought us into a side room where the fluorescent lights tried to be gentle. The supervisor explained it like counting with a child. Death certificates are filed by funeral directors or by physicians. The county accepts, issues certified copies, and shares updates with the state. The state passes it to Social Security. Banks subscribe to a death file to prevent fraud, so they freeze accounts. "It is designed to prevent fraud," she said, and winced at the irony. Mom folded her hands and asked, "Who signed my death?" The supervisor printed what she could, a line in the index with a certificate number and a funeral home, Elm and Vine Memorial Services. I had never heard of it. She could not give me the full certificate without formalities, but she promised to escalate the issue to the registrar. We left with a copy of the index entry and a sense that our next door was already marked with frosted glass. Elm and Vine turned out to be a suite in a strip mall between a nail salon and a shipping store. The doorbell tried to sound somber and gave up. A man in a suit came out from a back room. His tie was fine, his shoes were not. I told him my mother's name and that his business had filed her death. He blinked slowly, disappeared into the back with the hum of a refrigerator, and returned with empty hands. "We do not have that file," he said. His voice had the tightness of someone found out before the finding is official. I asked to see paperwork authorizing the filing. He said we should contact the county. I told him we had, and that if his name sat on a false record we would contact more than the county. He smiled without teeth and walked backward into the hum. On the sidewalk, under a sky that could not pick a color, I called Tessa. I told her there was a death certificate with Mom's name. She called it insane. Her voice thinned and then steadied. "What do you need me to do?" A question that often means, "What do you already know?" I wanted to talk to Paul. He called back an hour later with a voice full of performance. "Buddy," he began, a word he saves for moments when he needs me to act like one. He said there was some confusion, that he could swing by Willow Pines later. "No," I said. "Meet us at Vital Records." He said he had a meeting. I said I did not care. He said he would try. He did not. The bank called before dinner. A fraud specialist named Renee Voice Neat, pens capped, explained the routine. Notification of death forces a freeze. She needed proof my mother was alive. "What counts as proof?" I asked. "Bring her," she said. "Bring identification. We can note the profile, but we cannot unfreeze until Social Security updates or the registrar issues a letter. The system that took a fax would require a breathing person to reverse the lie." We went to Social Security in the morning. A guard held the door with practiced kindness. The woman at window 4 wore a sweater and patience-like armor. She looked at the condolence letter, then at Mom, then at me. "We will fix this," she said. She asked Mom questions only she would know. Old addresses, her first employer, the hospital where I was born. Mom answered like a student who guessed right. The woman scanned Mom's ID and a letter from the Willow Pines physician that said, with glorious bureaucracy, "Ms. Barst, Marina Harper is alive and under our medical supervision as of this date." She typed, checked another screen, and said, "This was filed using a funeral director's code. We will reverse it. It may take a few days to reach the banks. Here is a confirmation of correction." She stamped a paper talisman and slid it under the glass. I asked who filed it. She could not tell me in a way I could carry into a courtroom. She gave me a number for the program integrity office. We stepped outside. Mom dozed in the car like a queen wearing a seatbelt sash. The registrar called that afternoon. The certificate number matched an entry, but the record had anomalies. The physician listed was a Dr. Felix Lung, but the license number on the form did not match the state database. The funeral home's credentials were valid, but the funeral director's signature did not match other filings. The place of death was listed as home, but Willow Pines had logs of my mother eating pudding at the exact time the record claimed she left the world. The registrar placed a hold on the record and promised a letter for banks stating that a correction was in process. In plain words, the paper was pretending to be true in a room full of people trained to recognize the posture of truth. I felt like we had bought time with facts. Then another letter arrived, Probate Court, a notice of hearing to appoint a personal representative for the estate of Marina Harper, deceased. Petitioner, Tessa Warner. Hearing in 2 weeks. My stepsister had opened a probate case for a woman still arguing with nurses about tea. I called the probate clerk, a man who spoke slowly, as if he wanted his words to arrive safely. I explained, and he said, "Bring her." Sometimes the most persuasive exhibit is the one that breathes. The days between were a kind of weather we lived inside. Banks unfroze, then refroze as systems synced and unsynced. Pharmacy claims were denied and then honored. Willow Pines extended grace because Lois, the business manager, has a father who once needed help changing a world that did not care about his timeline. I printed, highlighted, and built a stack. Social Security's correction, the registrar's hold, Mom's IDs, my power of attorney, the physician's statement, and my own sworn affidavit that said the simplest sentence in the world. My mother is alive. On hearing day, I helped Mom into her Sunday dress, the one she still calls church. We sat in a hallway that smelled like lemon cleaner and unspent adrenaline. Tessa arrived in a dress designed to read responsible and lipstick that made a different argument. Payback beside her with the jaw of a man who prefers other people to be the villains of stories he writes. Their attorney, a woman from a billboard, nodded to the clerk like a regular. Tessa's attorney went first. Decedent, certificate, stepchild safeguarding the estate. The story clicked like a presentation. Then I stood and brought my mother forward. She waved at the judge as if the robe meant graduation. I handed the clerk our stack. "Your Honor," I said, surprised by my own calm, "this is Marina Harper. She is not deceased. There is an ongoing investigation into a fraudulent death certificate. We ask you to dismiss the petition." Silence filled the room, not for drama, but for calibration. Faces adjusted. The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Harper," she said, "how are you today?" My mother said, "They make the tea too fast here." The courtroom laughed gently, a permission slip for humanity. The judge asked Tessa's attorney, "On what basis did your client believe Ms. Pardis Harper was deceased?" Counsel pointed to the certificate and a title that said funeral home. The judge looked at the paper, then at the registrar's letter, then at my living mother, then at Tessa. "Did you have contact with Ms. Harper before filing?" Tessa opened and closed her mouth. Paul stared at the wall like it owed him an apology. The judge dismissed the petition on the spot and referred the matter to the district attorney. She used words like irregularities, false instrument, and immediate notice to financial institutions. She ordered certified copies of the dismissal sent to the bank named in the petition, to Social Security, and to the registrar. She told me to keep the court updated. She told Tessa, gently and directly, that courts depend on truthful paper, and that lying to a court is not theater with better seating. On the steps, Tessa tried to pass me like a stranger. I said her name. "Why?" I asked. "Not because that word opens locks, but because sometimes it moves a bolt you cannot see." She looked down, then away. "It was Paul's idea," she said. "We thought." She did not finish. "The blank could hold anything dark. We thought the money would come sooner. We thought you would overreact and then calm down. We thought Mom would never know. We thought paper could be a mirror we could trick." The district attorney's office called the following week. A prosecutor asked for the registrar's letter, my affidavit, any link between Tessa and the funeral home. He spoke carefully, like someone trying not to bruise a fact. "We are looking at charges," he said, "filing a false instrument, identity theft, possibly conspiracy." He did not promise justice, he promised work. The registrar did more than hold a record. Her office compared the physician license number and found it off by 2 digits. Dr. Loon provided a sworn statement. He had never treated my mother, never signed her death. The funeral home's credentials had been used from an IP address tied to Paul's internet account. The notary seal on an authorization form traced back to a notary with a log that showed she was notarizing a home sale in another county at the exact hour Mom was supposedly dead. The registrar wrote a sentence that still feels like rain after a heat wave. The document presented as a death certificate is counterfeit. Charges came without sirens. Docket numbers, notices to appear. Tessa and Paul were arraigned for offering a false instrument for filing and for identity theft. Their lawyer promised to fight. They posted bond, went home, and if walls remember, stood again under the same old ceiling of good intentions spoken in bad faith. Bank corrections lagged. Even with the court's dismissal and Social Security's reversal, one claim bounced because a system updated slower than truth. The chain pharmacy insisted on 48 hours, which is retail's favorite prayer. Willow Pines kept serving meals because Lois serves anyone who sits long enough in her office to be handed a napkin. I brought brownies because brownie is a currency that buys grace. When everything finally synced, the registrar's correction, Social Security's reversal, the bank's thaw, the damage revealed its smaller edges. Insurance claims denied during the death window needed resubmission. The bank encouraged a trusted contact note on Mom's profile. I added my name and the Willow Pines administrator. We set a verbal password on the account that only the bank and I know, a word that is not a pet, not a birthday, not the name of a street. We asked Social Security to mark Mom's record so that any future status change requires in-person verification at a field office. We enrolled her address in the county's property fraud alerts. Now, if anyone tries to record anything with her name, deed, lien, anything I get an email faster than a rumor, we put copies of Mom's IDs, my power of attorney, and the court order into a small fireproof safe. The code is not in any calendar or photo album, an accepted Tessa's case bent toward a plea. She admitted to filing a false instrument and accepted probation, community service, and restitution for fees. We documented filings, emergency motions, Willow Pine's late charges. Paul's case climbed a few steps and then settled low, a plea to a lesser count. The funeral home changed owners quietly. The registrar's office updated internal controls for who can file what and how. None of that brought back the days we spent proving a living woman was alive. People asked if I was angry. I said no because no is easier at the grocery store. The truth is that fury built a tent on my chest. I was angry that I had to prove breadth to systems that believe paper with a seal more than a room with a face. I was angry that my stepsister did math on our grief and tried to cash it early. I was angry that my mother's name, which she has polished for decades like a wedding ring, was used as a lever. And I was angry at myself for not seeing the early signs. The declined card, the restricted balance, the gentle clue that a wave was already on its way. There were bright spots. The clerk who called after hours to say the correction had posted. The Social Security worker who said, "We will fix this," and stamped a paper like a vow. The judge who asked my mother how her morning was before dismissing a lie in one sentence. The prosecutor who admitted, not on the record but in the voice of a person, "This one makes me mad." The nurse who printed the letter that let us move the first domino. The neighbor who raised an eyebrow and handed me a private joke and a casserole. If you have never had a stranger's form declare you no longer exist, I hope you never do. If you have, you know how fast a life can bend around a lie. You also know how to bend it back. It takes calls you do not want to make, chairs you do not want to sit in, patience you did not know you owned, and a willingness to repeat the simplest sentence in the world until the system writes it down. She is alive. We keep a copy of the registrar's correction in Mom's room, behind a photo of her holding me at a picnic, long before we needed power of attorney or property alerts. Sometimes she shows it to a nurse like it is a diploma. "This says I am here," she tells them, proud. They smile and say, "We can see that." On Sundays, if the weather agrees, I drive her to the park. We sit under a maple that behaves all year and then shows off in October. She watches dogs and children and a man who flies a kite too low. We talk about nothing that comes in an envelope. She asks about my week. I say, manageable, which is true in the way everything is manageable when you do one thing and then the next and then the next. We built a small list with Lois' names and numbers for whatever comes next. We keep tea in Mom's room and let it steep long enough to be called tea. We decided that, going forward, paper will be a shield or it will not be allowed near us at all. There were aftershocks. A travel club mailed a condolence offer for discounted memorial cruises. A scam letter pretended to be from a benefits reinstatement team and asked for a copy of Mom's ID. A robocall told us to press one to avoid legal action on the estate. We did not press anything. We added a callback requirement to Mom's bank profile so that no one can change settings on a single call. We told Willow Pines to refuse any new authorized relative unless my power of attorney is present. We created a one-page summary sheet for staff with Mom's photo, list of authorized contacts, and the sentence, "Verification must be in person." We taped a copy to the inside of her closet door so it can be pulled down in 5 seconds when someone is training on a busy shift. I thought about Tessa more than I wanted to. She moved out of Paul's house 2 months after the plea. She texted that she was in counseling. Another text said she got a job in clinic intake forms for people who want help, not forms used to take something that is not yours. I wished her well. I did not invite her to dinner. Forgiveness is not a key. It is a decision to stop carrying a shard of glass in your pocket. If you are in this story yourself, here are the plain English points I wish someone had handed me on one honest card. First, a notary stamp is not a truth serum. It means someone showed identification and signed. It does not prove they understood or that they should have been signing at all. Second, vital records offices record what they are given. They do not investigate motive at the window, but registrars can hold and correct records when evidence says a document is wrong. Bring evidence. Bring breathing proof. Third, Social Security can reverse a false report, but it takes verification and a few days for the change to reach banks and pharmacies. Bring identification, a letter from a doctor or facility, and your patience. The stamp you carry out is worth more than the time you spent to get it. Fourth, probate courts depend on truthful paper. If someone opens a case on a living person, show up with that person with identification with the registrar's letter and ask for dismissal. A judge can close a door on a lie with a single order. Fifth, add guardrails after the storm. Freeze credit. Add fraud alerts. Enroll in property alert services. Set a bank code word. Put in person only. Flags on records that matter, like Social Security and facility files. Keep originals in a fireproof safe, copies off-site, and a one-page who to call sheet taped where staff can find it. Sixth, do not try to win arguments on the phone with strangers whose job is to stick to scripts. Ask for names, badge numbers, and callback times. Follow up in writing. Send by certified mail when it matters. Paper trails are not dramatic, but they win. Seventh, forgive yourself for not spotting the first sign. You do not fail because you did not know a code number on a Tuesday. You win because you kept going on Wednesday. My stepsister filed a death certificate. The registrar froze it. The judge dismissed probate. Social Security reversed a lie. We changed every lock and password and habit that could be used against us. And in the quiet that followed, I learned that some of the strongest protections are small and boring. Keep your information current with the institutions that matter. Tell your pharmacy and your doctor who to call. Store originals where only trusted hands can reach. Enroll in alerts so new records never surprise you in the mail. Paper does not speak truth on its own. Someone has to make it. Protect yourself tip, not legal advice. If a death is falsely reported, take 3 fast steps. Bring the living person and identification to Social Security for reversal. Ask the county registrar to place a hold and issue a correction letter, and show both to the bank to unfreeze accounts. Then add guardrails. Freeze credit, set a bank code word, enroll in your county's property fraud alerts, require in-person verification for any status change, and keep originals in a fireproof safe with copies off-site. Paper should be your shield, not a weapon. Stay safe.